No. नहीं चला गया वेलकम नो वरी माइक भी चालू है सो मैं तो वो वाला माइक में गाना पड़ेगा ये पे वो बात है Somebody should be there before. A very warm and graceful morning to one and all present here. As this training program reached to its 10th day, I hope we all gain a better understanding of AMR and why it is such a hot topic these days. Now it's time to troubleshoot NGS. We are fortunate enough to have Dr. Madhvi Joshi, Joint Director GBRC, with us. She will be enlightening us with her talk on troubleshooting in NGS. Please give a huge round of applause for ma'am. Ma'am, please.
Round of applause is required. Yeah. Thank you, Twinkle, and very good morning, all of you. During your hands-on training session as well as the live sessions that we had for the past 6 weeks in the online training program, I hope you have gained a lot of insight about how you can deploy the next generation sequencing or advanced technologies, which can in turn leverage you to take the work further in AMR. So previously, when we were only restricted to phenotypic methods, so many things were not clear about how the gene interactions are playing a role in spreading of AMR, how the networks are created cross-kingdom. So all those things now we are fortunate enough to gain insight about. And by now, I think all of you are also aware about the One Health Poultry Hub, those who are associated as well as those who are not associated. So in that also, we are trying to understand the distribution of AMR across the poultry value chain using next generation sequencing tools. So whatever, the little glimpse all of you had for the next generation sequencing technologies, I am sure that you have learned the importance of this technology and how this technology can play an important role in mitigating some of the major threats, because everybody says that current pandemic is of course a COVID, but next pandemic is going to be a AMR. or the infections that are caused due to antimicrobial resistance. Currently also, along with the One Health Poultry Hub through India Alliance, we are also now talking to South African countries where we are trying to understand how the zoonosis and One Health can be integrated into a core research discipline. And I'm sure one thing is very clear to all of you, that the science is nowadays not restricted to so-called domain. Everybody is cross-talking with the domain experts in different area, and that is how we are successfully able to demonstrate the One Health concept. For example, if you look at just the poultry hub, there are social scientists, there are veterinarians, there are microbiologists, there are epidemiologists, there are people who are predicting and doing mathematical modeling, and all of them, they are coming together along with the policy decision makers also to understand the value of the issue that the world is going to face. So we want to prepare ourselves better for, the pandemic when it arises out of AMR. So today I would be briefly discussing about the troubleshooting in NGS. So how many of you from the participants have hands-on experience on next generation sequencing? How many of you have performed yourself? Which platform? Apart from the training, yeah. If you conclude training, then I think all of you have the experience, right? But if you just exclude the training portion, how many of you have directly worked on NGS, or maybe capillary sequencing, or maybe real-time PCR, or digital PCR? Yeah.
We have sent actually samples for this outsourcing.
Okay, but you understand the technologies, right? So, okay, some of the things may sound kind of crazy to you, so you can stop me anywhere you think where you need further explanation. But, nahi? Band hai kya?
Hello? Yeah.
Okay, you want me to stand here only?
No, it's okay.
It's okay now? I can move, yeah. So, basically, when you are talking about next generation sequencing, what we try to do is, so DNA is a very large. Even if you consider a bacterial whole genome, it ranges from 3 to 5 MB, million base pairs, right? And those MBs you are then trying to create into pieces like a jigsaw puzzle. So suppose you have a 500 base pair library, or you have 600 base pair library. So you create those long DNA into pieces, and that is what is your library. Now, when you're talking about libraries, there are DNA library and there are RNA library, right? So DNA library also could be of two things: for understanding the genome of an organism, or for understanding the epigenome. Epigenome, where you study the histone modifications or DNA methylation patterns and stuff like that. In genome also, there are varieties of things. I can give this lecture, just don't worry about clicking it. This is available. You can copy it, take it along, no issues about it. So this genome, in that also you have multiple libraries. The first thing is a targeted sequencing. So what you do is, you're not looking at the whole genome, but you're looking at only the gene of interest. For example, AMR library. So in AMR library, we are only sequencing those genes which are reported or known to be associated with antimicrobial resistance. Whole the whole exome sequencing, that means you're only looking at the expressed part of the genome. So if you talk about human genome, which is as long as 3.3 GB, from that 3.3 GB, the expressed genome is only very limited, around only 50 KB. So that much, the whole exome is there. So what you do is that you only sequence the exome part. So that is called as exome sequencing. Then of course you understand the whole genome sequencing, where you are trying to study the whole genome, and the metagenome sequencing. Metagenome sequencing is a community sequencing where you take sample from any community and you just try and extract DNA out of it and then perform sequencing out of it. So in all this, there are multiple. So you could do resequencing. Resequencing means you're not doing it for the first time. Repeatedly you are doing it. Or it could be a de novo sequencing, like you're trying to understand the genome of an organism for the very first time. And then the assembly and annotation, and then the putative gene identification. These are the pathways to follow. For example, you are trying to do the ChIP-seq. So for example, you want to understand where the DNA methylation variation is there, or maybe immunoprecipitation based sequencing, where in cell culture or even in cancer sometimes you are trying to capture the rarest event taking place at a cellular level. So there you do this type of sequencing. Again, it could be resequencing or a de novo. Then if you do resequencing, of course you have a reference to map. So you would map your whatever sequence is available to reference, and then the genome organization analysis is done. Or else it is for de novo sequencing, you have to perform assembly, and with assembly you do the annotation. Now, if suppose the starting material is RNA, that means you are trying to understand the transcriptome or an expressed part of the DNA. So it could be either the whole transcriptome study. It also could be a meta-transcriptome study. Just to understand, for example, you have taken a sewage sample, or you have taken an affluent sample, and you extract RNA out of it, and you want to understand that what are the genes that are getting expressed in the process of degradation of a dye, for example. And each gene is corresponding to a which organism. And that is how you build a consortia. That, okay, these are the important organisms that are playing a role in the community dynamics. Then it could be a long non-coding RNA sequencing also, or a short non-coding RNA, for example, miRNA. Now everybody knows importance of miRNA sequencing, right? That they are very important in upregulation or downregulation of many of the genes and pathways. And by targeting those miRNAs, you can actually regulate the cellular level gene expression assays, or it could be a targeted sequencing, like in case of SARS-CoV-2. So we know that it is an RNA virus, and that RNA virus we are now trying to sequence. So your starting material is RNA, then you convert it into cDNA, that's a complementary DNA, and then from there onwards you directly incorporate it into the library. So again, there could be a de novo or a resequencing, and based on that your analysis pipeline is going to be set. So this is just to give you a glimpse of that. For any NGS experiments, the very important thing is the library. If your library is performed perfect, then your entire experiment will go smoothless or seamless. So this is, I think already you have studied the two different platforms, MiSeq and ThermoFisher, how the library preparation takes place. So you have cut your DNA into different pieces or the fragments. Then you do the adapter ligation, and then clonal amplification takes place, and then sequencing, and then data analysis. So this is just to give you, and at each step of this, what can go wrong where, that we will just try to discuss, just to give you a glimpse. So the very first thing for any sequencing is to confirm the material that you are taking for next generation sequencing. So during the induction training program to our fellow also, I mentioned that it is like, flying a fighter pilot. So a fighter plane. So when a fighter pilot is there who is flying an aircraft, the cost of the plane is written on the shoulder, just to remind him that what he is carrying is maybe, only few numbers in the country, if you talk about the Rafale and stuff like that. So here also, when you press one switch, it costs you 1.5 to 2 lakhs if it is a MiSeq or a Proton system. If it is a Novasic, it ranges into few lakhs. So it's a very, very costly affair, and that's why it requires many of the cross checks and balances. So the very first thing is to confirm and verify your starting material. Most of the times we have seen when people just send a sample for sequencing, they are contaminated with other DNA, which even they cannot imagine, and it would be sequenced. And then, your entire experiments are failed. So usually it is very, very important to double check it. And in case of metagenome, that is why important to keep replicates, which are biological replicates, in order to ensure that if something goes wrong at one place, you can capture it in the other place. So, like you do microscopy, if it is a pure culture, or if it's a cell culture based experiments, you first verify. And most of the time, if it is a singular genome, if it is not a metagenome, it is always better to confirm with the capillary sequencing with some target genes. Suppose you are doing the whole genome sequencing of a organism, it's better to just do 16S and make sure that that's the same DNA that you want to sequence. In case of the human libraries, also sometimes we just check the PCR amplification using 16S or ITS, because the fungi and bacteria could be the most common contaminants during your handling. And if they are present in your library, they would take up all your sequences and you would not get the desired results. So, yes. Then comes the quality and quantity of DNA. Of course, there are various parameters to take cross checks and balances. Is that once you isolate your DNA, you run it in gel just to ensure whether the intactness is there or not, or sometimes you have RNA contamination, or sometimes you don't have anything but only a shearing of DNA. So here you can give RNase treatment, or if this type of gel is observed, you have to certainly go for re-isolation of the DNA itself. Then comes the quantification of DNA. So there are spectrometric and fluorimetric methods, and both have its advantages and disadvantages. So here is spectrophotometry. You can of course do the quality and quantity both. For example, you have seen Kaya Expert here in GBRC, and this is a nano drop. You must have seen this. This was this was kind of a good machine where you do not lost any sample. If you have a very low quantity, sometimes when you are doing the organelle sequencing, we have faced this issue while performing, the sequencing of a mitochondrial genome from Asiatic lion. It was a first report in world. I'm talking about 2009 or 10 somewhere. So at that time, the quantity of the material itself was a huge problem. And at that time, wasting 1 or 2 microliter over just a quantification was something that your experiment cannot afford it, right? So at that time, this was found to be a very good machine where you can just, measure it and then take it back for sequencing. But it has a low accuracy and sensitivity is also very less. This machine is a Qubit 4, which is a fluorometric based DNA estimation machine. You must have seen it here as well as in AU, both places. This machine has a high accuracy and a very good sensitivity. But one of the major, drawback of such method is that here there could be a lot of issue of a carryover contamination, or a lot of impurities that you could have mixed with it, and you cannot differentiate it because ultimately it's a DNA. There is no specificity to measure. So, for example, that you're looking at another machines which you have seen here is a Agilent bioanalyzer, right? And in the bioanalyzer, when you are running your DNA, so it would give you, for example, this is an example of an FFP sample. And we all know that when a formalin fixed tissue is there, and mostly it is used for cancer related research, the quality and quantity both could be challenges. And that is how you deploy such sensitive techniques. First to run that, okay, this is an appropriate sample with a Dean score of around 5.6, which you can take it forward. But these two samples, they do not meet the quality and the criteria, and that's why it should not be taken further. So sometimes there are issues of insufficient migration due to the salt contamination, so that all you can overcome by reprecipitation or stuff like that. In Qubit also, there are certain things you have to just keep in mind, that everything should be at a room temperature only. Sometimes you just keep on freezing, throwing, and it can create a lot of issues. So one of the very key things in an NGS lab is to do right aliquoting before you start processing. Because, for example, even in real-time PCR, you would have observed that probe over a period of time loss its fluorescence, or that's why you get a very less intensity in your real-time PCR. Similarly, in Qubit also it's a fluorometric detection, so it's better to aliquot it. Same is case with the primers. For example, 16S, we do not every time do the adductor ligation. We have our own primers for 48 different barcodes, and students tend to contaminate it. So every time you will sequence, there would be some other organism that is also getting amplified along with it. So it's always better that to have. And one practice that we are following at GBRC, I just would want to highlight at this point of time, is we have a separate primer repository and people who are in charge of the primer repository. So may it be a probe or primer ordered by any research group, the moment it arrives in the lab, it invariably goes to a person who takes care of the primer repository. The dilution and everything, would be taken care by those designated people only, and students will only get the working volume issue, which is a 10 picomole. And that is how, you can overcome, because you can imagine here we have only genomics activities ongoing, and irrespective of you use any products like DNA out or RNA out or DNA zap or anything, the DNA concentration itself is so very high that it can create a lot of troubles in your NGS. So for nanodrop also, as I mentioned, there could be a high chances of carryover DNA contamination. Okay, so once you have your DNA, the first thing you do is a fragmentation for library preparation, or in Illumina you call it as a tegmentation process, right? So in fragmentation, for IonTorrent, there are two methods. You must have seen a Covaris, which is a sonication based application for DNA shearing. It's not that preferred a method, honestly, because first thing is it requires a very huge amount of DNA which goes for library preparation, wherein in enzyme you can just have very small concentration and still you could prepare a better libraries out of it. In enzymatic, the most important thing is enzyme concentration and time. If you do not pay attention to the enzyme concentration, sometimes, I have seen fellows who are doing a process like this, that rather than making this enzymatic digestion process on ice, they think isme to kya jata hai, they just start mixing. And even at 25-degree enzyme can start action and you may not know. Sometimes even, the silliest of the things, that when you are handling more sets of libraries, for example, you are handling 24 libraries at a time, the sequence makes difference, In the same order from where you have started adding the things, you should start stopping the things, the stopping buffer and all. So, and again in the Illumina tegmentation process, time is important. So, what could go wrong when you're using, say, a mechanical shearing process? So you must first understand the sonication process, what frequency is actually passing, for what interval it is passing. And it requires some expertise to understand the DNA shearing process, for example, from bacteria. You need to do maybe 2-3 trial and error experiments to get a proper library size. Ensure proper water level. Another things, essay tube should not have any bubbles, otherwise it can go wrong. Or make sure that all the sample is removed from the tube, because otherwise the recovery would be very less. For end repair also you need to take care, because you need to create a blunt library in order to generate specific adapter ligation processes. For enzymatic also, ice is compulsory, not the room temperature, or timing and the sequence of adding even the EDTA or a stop buffer. So these are some of the things. So this is just a comparison of the mechanical versus enzymatic fragmentation method using the DNA high sensitivity screen tape assay. And this is the size, around 150 to 250 base pair, plus or minus 10%. So as you can see that the fragmentase enzyme where it was used, it displays a broad shoulder indicative, that is the blue one. And the Covaris, it has a narrow range. Similarly, time-dependent profile of a library, if you just look at it, for the enzymatic fragmentation, and it will give you an idea how critical the time is for managing the library preparation. Then the important thing is adapter ligation and library amplification. So once your DNA is ready with an equal size, sometimes we also use E-gel. You would have seen E-gel, right? To just isolate a specific length of a portion from that entire DNA library. The first thing is that for any sequencing, you do the adapter ligation to your library. Now, this is again a very, very important step. If theoretically the adapter versus your library is to be in 1:1 proportion, and if that concentration doesn't match it, either you have a clonal amplification, or you have lost some of the important libraries which are not ligated to your adapters. Ultimately, a very simple thing everybody should keep in mind is that NGS is entirely a PCR driven process. And whatever PCR biases are there, all those are going to be reflected in your all NGS experimentations, right? So, after incubation, you should also immediately go for purification in order to also prevent self-adapter ligations, because then you cannot discriminate. All the further QC is based on adapter ligations or adapter ligated libraries. So that is why this is very important to avoid adapter dimers, and based on the library concentration, use the lowest possible cycles to avoid duplication in reads. This is also very, very important, because after adapter ligation, you take it for library amplification. And usually it is recommended to perform around 8 cycles. Usually you do, right? What happens is that sometimes you think that you have not got appropriate concentration, so you might increase 1 or 2 cycles, and that could lead to sequencing read biases. So some portion of the library would be over sequenced and some portion of the library would be under sequenced. Are you trying to understand? So what will happen, when at the end of the analysis you will realize that some of the portions have higher coverages and some portion has very less coverage. So that's why it is very important to use the lowest possible cycles to avoid the duplication in the reads. So again, the dimers and all those things, adapter dimers, you can visualize on bioanalyzer, and then you can also do further purification. The library purification, after that we also use E-gel. So this is a E-gel for you have seen here during the experimentation, this E-gel. This is a very beautiful thing, It's just a small agarose gel, but it has an illuminator back, and you can look at the DNA running real time. You just need to on this switch. Twinkle, I think you can just show eGel, after this is over. And here this red button, you can keep pressing. So here is your marker running, okay? And you want a 500 base pair. So the moment here 500 base pair enters, you stop the current. You add the buffer over here and you can remove from every library. Can you see the sample is running, the library is running? So suppose you need 500 base pair. So the moment 500 base pair is entering this well, your marker, you stop running the gel, pour buffer in each well, and you can harvest that library. So that is it. And now even easier is an AM pure bed, which are magnetic beds. If you use in a different concentration, it would help you for the library purification and cleanup. But because these are magnetic beads, you have to make sure there are certain things that it has a higher density. So most of the time, it tend to settle very fast to the bottom. So again, it is better to LE coat it, because all these are also reservoirs of contamination, right? If there are 10-15 people handling AM pure beads, and if one person contaminates it, it can keep on adding the contamination to your libraries. So beads are very sticky. You would have seen beads here as well as in Anand also. So they are very sticky. So you have to make sure that they are vortexed thoroughly before use and they are at room temperature. 70% ethanol irrespective has to be prepared fresh, because even if you think that I prepared it morning only, but you don't know how much evaporation has taken place and it could not be exactly 70%. So always prepare it in Eppendorf in a very small desired quantity only. And these beads, when you're looking at a drying of the palette, it should not be over dried or it should not be wet. It should be optimally dried. So can you see this is a sticky palette, shining, that means still it has a water component. This is an over dried. Can you see a cracks over here? So it is over dried. And if it is over dried, then again it would reduce the recovery. So this is a completely made dry palette which is to be taken further. All these things of course comes with experience as well. But just to give some highlights, what are the critical steps over here. Now, most of the time what happens is that standard recommended protocol by all these people is limited up to the bioanalyzer, that or a TEP station, where you look at your pattern as well as your concentration of the library. But in GBRC, we also deploy real-time PCR or digital PCR for quantification of library. And this has reduced our failure rates significantly, because even if you have a single library to take it into the sample preparation, it's okay. But most of the time, these libraries are barcoded. So that means you have multiple samples, sometimes also could be in multiplication of 48 or 96 that you are trying to pool and use it for one reaction. So in that cases, you have to make very sure that the exact library concentrations are taken. And that is why we use the real-time PCR based method or a digital PCR which we have. And these methods I think you have performed on the first day hands-on, right? And it gives you exactly a accurate amount of library quantification. So that is very, very essential. And this is also, you have seen how you generate a profile of your library, isn't it? So, of course, the recommended library quantification methods are fluorometric or the qPCR based or a bioanalyzer based, or some methods are based on the normalizations. Now the quantification methods that you choose, usually the bioanalyzer has a higher accuracy and it is recommended for quality control. Even the fluorometric it tells you the double-stranded DNA, but it cannot discriminate between the incomplete and the complete library, as I told you. And specifically qPCR, it measures the full length libraries only, because you have a forward and reverse primer. So it would tell you the exact library concentration, irrespective of the adapter dimers. And then UV spectrophotometer based is never a preferred method for any NGS library quantification. So assessing the library quantity with bioanalyzer, I would just skip this because you have performed your self bioanalyzer, even I think at Anand and here, both the places, right? And there are different chips for different assays, and based on that you can order them and run them. Okay, so now your libraries are ready, and then you are taking it for sequencing. Again, for sequencing, the optimum loading is very, very critical. This is a Illumina flow cell, and if you just look at it, this is a over clustering, this is under clustering. If you load less, and this is completely then based on the library quantification which is coming from the previous step. So if you load less, what will happen? You will end up wasting your flow cell and sequencing reagents, because you will get very less reads and the time and money spent is not optimally utilized. If you do over clustering, what happens is that you lose the data quality and the data output both, because most of the time you have to discard the reads because of the low QC value. So you have understood the terminology of the Q scores, right? What is Q30?
1 in
1,000.
1 in 1000. And Q20? 1 in 100. So in case of over clustering, you would have a lower QC reads. So even in the quality filtration itself, your reads will be lost. Complete run failure will also take place in over clustering. These are some of the optimum library concentrations, where ideally, your one well should have one library and equally and uniformly distributed. That's the ideal condition that we are looking at. So this is an optimum. Just ignore, this is a typo error over here. This is an optimum library when it looks like data by lane. If you look at it, this is over clustered library, and this is severely over clustered library. So under clustering can lead to insufficient data, and over clustering can lead to the low data quality. So in ideal case, you are looking at a optimal picture here. There are some common causes of the under and over clustering, and some of the risk mitigation is that, as I mentioned for the ethanol, similarly the NaOH which is required also should be prepared from a mol biograde NaOH fresh. Okay. And excess NaOH concentration in the diluted samples inhibits the formation of clusters. So that is why for optimal cluster density, denature the samples with the freshly diluted NaOH more than 12.5 pH, and make sure that the final concentration in diluted sample is less than 1 millimolar. If the diluted library have a final concentration of more than 1 millimolar NaOH, then you have to use tris HCl to neutralize the pH. So these are the optimum flow cell loading for mini-seq. The row density you have 170 to 220 for MySeq version 2 and version 3. The NextSeq, HiSeq and HiSeq high output kit, rapid run and high output. So again, what is important here is a analysis of the percent base plot within the sequence analysis viewer. Now this is very, very important. Sometimes you have libraries which are homogeneous libraries. For example, if you are just doing 16S from any source, it is a conserved region, and the variation within your library is very less. So what will happen, sometimes you would observe that at every cycle, the base biases will increase. Okay, because it's a homogeneous library. But if you are talking about, again, AT and GC rich regions, or a total AT GC content of your library also makes very important role. So ideally you want to have a picture like this where all the bases are calibrated and equally distributed. Okay, but then for high GC also and high AT rich libraries, you have specialized kits available for library preparation so that you can use. So these are the intensity profiles on version 1, which is now no more in place. Mostly we are using V2 and V3 kits for the sequencing. So accurate quantification, as I mentioned, why it is critical? When you have a pool. So when you have say 10 sample in one library or a 6 sample, you want 16% reads belonging to each sample. But if the concentration is not properly estimated while pooling the library, you could end up having a higher reads of one library and a very less reads of other libraries. Similarly, if it is a 10x lower concentration for one library pool, what will happen? The reads for other libraries would increase, but for this library you would not get any data, so you will have to do repetition. To overcome these issues, there are control ISP beads which are given by Thermo Fisher, which you have to, it's a control library, whether your sequencing reactions, your flow cell, your machine worked well during sequencing or not. So sometimes, we feel that why we should lose 5% of the reads just for the QC purpose. But these are very, very important things, Similarly, in Illumina, you add the fix, right? It's also a standard library. So usually what happens is, you do 5% spiking of it. But if you have a high GC rich library, or maybe a library like 16S, where the heterogeneity of the library is very less, sometimes company recommend using even 10%, up to 10% of the fixed control. So in order to maintain the sequencing efficiencies. So this is for ion ampli-seq. The observations, like for example, if you have a short amplicons, it could be because of the poor purification or the denaturation of the digested amplicon, or loss of long amplicons sometimes, because the library in case of AMR is also heterogeneous. Some genes are as high as 800 base pair in that library, which would have 2 or sometimes even 3 primer pools designated for one gene. In some cases, the gene size is 250 base pair. So within the library also, you have diversity in amplicons, and sometimes during, so this is again a loss of AT rich amplicons. So denaturation of the digested amplicon, or sometimes, unknown reason is there, or the loss of the GC rich amplicons. So for this, there are special kits that they recommend, so you should use it. And for ion torrent, one of the issue is a polyclonal or a clonal libraries. So what happens is that when you are doing emulsion PCR means ideally, you have a one library which is unique and that is getting amplified. But sometimes, the same libraries get amplified, and that is what will lead to have the higher polyclonal, the higher clonal libraries in your sample. This could be primarily because of the very short library length, or could be due to the wrong quantification or the high amount of the library loaded in the emulsion PCR. So naturally, some of the library is lost during emulsion PCR itself, or the adapter dimer contamination. It was not removed during the library purification. So low signal intensity or the loss of data due to the low quality. So sometimes the sequencing reagent kits are also expired, and you need to check what intensity it is generating in a machine. Or sometimes you have a very shorter read length than the expected. Everything goes okay, but at the end of the sequencing you would get a read length bar graph like this. So could be because of the emulsion PCR kit is expired, so you do not know what has gone wrong. So for the coverage dropout, of course, poor DNA and RNA quality, like FFPE tissues, you could have coverage dropout, or sometimes small sized amplicons. So this coverage dropout issue currently is huge when we are sequencing miRNA libraries, because the miRNA library size itself is 35 to 50 base pair, and when you sequence it, most of the data just gets lost. You have to use only a portion of data for the analysis. And sometimes you have a high GC content, so you have to use a specific kit for the high GC rich libraries. Ambiguous clustering call, again because of a low diversity of the library or the wrong quantification you could get it, or the insufficient purity of the DNA. So these are some of the references, and thank you for being such a patient audience. If there are any questions, we can take it, or else we can end the session. अंकित कोरिंगा सर ने बोला ही लेना.
We go for lowest possible cycle, then we don't get affect clean or rare DNA.
So that is very important question. We faced this issue when we were sequencing the metagenome, the whole shotgun metagenome from Little Run of Kutch. And of course, the sample itself was having a very high salinity. You have seen, it is a white desert. The entire salt layer is there. So naturally, the salinity in that DNA was higher than what you could have even in the ocean water, because it's a concentrated, deposited for over a period of time. 8 is optimum, because that is, you consider that you started with around 10 nanogram of your DNA, and then you make a fragments out of it, which would have you around 4 to 5 nanograms. And then when you want optimum concentration of library, the 8 cycles are optimum. But in case when you are looking at the rare DNA, also, as I mentioned, in the metagenomic samples like this, or sometimes in the ChIP-seq or an immunoprecipitation sequencing. So in a cell culture, there are thousands of events taking place, and you want to capture the rarest event. So in that case, you have to do the different library preparation method altogether. So it's called as immunoprecipitation, and they take out only that DNA. Now once that rarity is out in your library, it processes as a regular library. But still, in metagenomic DNA of a Little Run of Kutch, although with a very, very poor QC score, we had some sequences of even the animals that extincted some thousands years ago. And we, since then, are now also trying to develop a pipeline where with a low quality reads, even if it belongs to some of the rare species, how can you, because there are no reference sequences. In one of the major challenge that we faced, one of my student was working on lichens. You would have all seen lichens. It is thought to be a symbiont. Initially, we thought that it is only fungi, and algae or a cyanobacteria, which forms a close association. But it is, a community in itself. So we have taken lichens from as harsh condition as a little run of Kutch to the same species occurring in a dang, which is kind of a evergreen tropical forest kind of a thing. And you would see that certain bacterial presence was invariably present. So that means what we thought initially to be only symbiosis of two organisms, but it actually ended up discovering that there are some communities which are required to form a lichen. And at that time, we wanted to establish, because to culture the fungi, which is a lichenized fungi, is again kind of very difficult, because they can't grow in a condition normally prevailing in the lab. So there were no references available up to class level. And we had a data from 2015 onwards. When you perform MG-Rust, it would tell you some aspergillus or some penicillium or something. And we used to think for years together that we have contaminated this library and, we do not have. Then later on, the clustering came into the picture, or where you are now performing what is called as binning approach. And that binning approach helps you from the metagenome. There are diverse DNA. So you want to cluster a identical DNA and make a genome out of it. So ours was the first report in the world to create a fungi DNA as high as 70% uniformity from a metagenome. And that paper is now also published. It was a part of one of the students' PhD work. So these are the challenges. And sometimes you think that you have done something wrong, but since there are no references, where it will go and calibrate, right? For metagenome, you need references for identification. If it is a de novo or if a single organism is there, you know that this is the DNA you have taken out from X organism, like for a lion genome when we were performing. We knew that this is a lion genome. So, it's a single DNA and you can perform varieties of methods for assembly, but for metagenome, there are restrictions. So, availability of the source is also an issue, or a reference is also a major issue on those types. And then by 2018 or 19, we had some references available. And then it classified it into the lichenolytic fungi at least. Yeah.
Enrichment step.
Huh?
Due to some silly mistake, like if we forgot to place a collection tube, the entire sample will be lost. Is there any way to retain, or
You have to eat more almonds. So there is a joke that we tell, sometimes, that last time when we perform, because initially when every lab performs such high-end experiments and then you get desired results, it's a very joyous thing, that we generated. Even I remember we used to, people are not here, Ramesh was also not there, but sometimes the people used to say that in this chip, people have claimed only up to 15 GB data and we got 18 GB, madam. See, how excitement. But we used to just joke like that if you would have jumped during an experiment, you just jump once. Just try to follow exactly what you did the previous time. Its best thing is to have, timers or maybe the steps defined, or in some of the critical time, it's better to have two people performing library. So at least if one person is doing, the other person is there just to ensure the QC of what he or she is doing is right.
Can be reverse also. Coach will start talking.
No, you just listen to her question. She has an interesting question. question to ask. Yeah, please repeat.
Finally, both are girls.
No, so you can't have gender bias here.
She is referring to the almond. Now
No,
we have a
what she?
problem.
No, just ask about her question. Please repeat.
Actually, sir, I asked that in iron torrent arrangement step, due to some silly mistake, like if we forgot to place a collection tube, what will happen? Entire sample will be lost. Is there any backup we have, because we are using entire library in enrichment? So, is there any way to retain that?
એક વાર થયું હતું ORS માં બટ ટ્યુબ તો ત્યાં રાખી હતી બટ એનું પેલી એપી ઉપર હતી પણ એનું જે ઉપર કવર હોય ને ત્યાં પેલાને ટચ થઈ ગયું છે ફાઇનલ ત્યારે લોડ કરવાયું કે સેમ્પલ બધું સેમ્પલ બહાર જતું રહ્યું પછી વી કેનોટ રિકવર એનીથિંગ.
So you make it badam khata jaho.
Once Sardarji was traveling, and then ticket checker was coming. So neighbor asked, "Do you have ticket?" Yes, I have ticket. From right pocket, he took out one ticket. So you have ticket? Yes. In case I misplace this, then I have got another ticket. And but I have got season pass now. There is no end to makeup.
That's why I said start eating almonds so that you could remember nicely. इसको बंद कर दो अभी.